Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you some T206s I have from my set. These are my ungraded portion. Probably consists about 20% of what I have. These cards I collect all front back combinations. They come in 16 different advertising backs, and the base set is 524 cards. The master set, taking into consideration all the front back combinations, could be anywhere near the 6,000 range. Something that nobody has ever attempted, or some are attempting, but nobody's ever succeeded. So today I'm going to show you some different front back combinations. These are all ungraded, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, I've got to move the camera here a little bit, so I don't want to get you guys seasick. And we'll grab first pile here. These are basically, most of them are ready to be sent out and graded by PSA at some point, which I haven't gotten around to. One of these days, you know, maybe if they run a good special, I might send the batch in. This here is a Southern League card, Jacksonville. You can see the back. It's an Old Mill Cigarettes back. This here, they came in Southern League backs, and they just had the regular Old Mill Cigarettes backs. This is one of the Southern League cards. There's another one here, Deseru from Baltimore. This one, Sweet Caporal back. This is a little more difficult back. Some may call it common, but it's only as common as what the population reports show. Currently, this is a very low population. This is a 350 subjects back, and if you look on the bottom there, factory 25, that combination with this card front is actually pretty rare. So even though you may think you have a common back, you may have a pretty good card in your set. So it's always fun to find these cards being sold as commons when in reality they're not. Here's a Bill Bradley with bat. Similar back here. Factory 25. These were made with factory 25 and factory 30 backs for the 350 subjects. They also had 150 subjects with factory 25, factory 30, and they also had a factory 649 with an overprint on there, which I'm sure you'll see at some point in all these cards. They also had a factory 350 or 350 460 subjects, and those had a whole bunch of different factories. They had 25, 30, they had a 42, they had a 42 overprint. So like I said, there's so many different combinations and ways to collect this set, and you know, I'll be explaining that more throughout my T206 videos. But I just want to give you guys, you know, a little something to enjoy, you know, while I'm trying to get those videos organized and put together. This is, you know, I'm fairly new on making YouTube videos, so, you know, things are going to be a little experimental at first until we can call this so-called professional. And we got another card here. This one here, Sovereign Cigarettes back, 350 subject. With these backs, they came in 150 subject, 350 subject, and 460. 350 subject is the most common of the three. But then again, like I said, it's all about population report numbers. You got to keep track of those, and to really see what's going on, see how many are out there. This back is one of, it's not the most common, and it's not the most difficult. This is kind of like a mid-type advertisement back that you might want to collect. Some people collect just this back only. There's so many ways to collect this set, and that's one of the things that makes it so popular. And, you know, the other thing is some of these cards, they have, you know, same players, they have different poses. Now this here's a Sovereign 150 subjects back. You know, we just saw the 350 previously, and you can see how we got two different subjects, but the same Sovereign advertising back. So when I originally said there's 16 different, these two cards, even though they're different subjects, they would still be considered one of the same 16. So if you were to break them all down, you're literally around 38 different front-back combinations. Not every card has that many advertisement backs. Some of them have more than others, some only have a few. And it's, you know, as you learn this set, you'll learn to know which ones are more common, which ones are more difficult. This one here's a polar bear back. These cards here were put in scrap tobacco, which is basically just in like pouches or bags. So a lot of these cards tend to have tobacco stains on them, which is fairly common, but these are extremely difficult to find with no stains at all, just because they were sitting in the, you know, with the tobacco, and you know, they absorb any of the, you know, the moisture from it. So here's another Southern League, another old mill. Sovereign 350. Majority of my collection, you know, consists of not any of the common backs, but some of the more difficult ones. I tend to leave the common ones to you know, add last to my collection, just because there's so many more of them out there. A lot of people will tell you that, you know, these are very common cards. It's a, you know, there's, you know, tens and hundreds of thousands of these cards out there, and you know, it is true, but when you get into the details of the cards, the front and back combinations, you know, what you thought may have been a very common card becomes a one-of-a-kind card. This one here, it's a, you know, this card, you know, comes with a New York American variation and a Boston variation. So even back in 1909 to 1911, when these were produced, they had, you know, what we would call today as parallel cards or variations. But they didn't know they were doing that back then. We've, you know, these were, you know, inserted into cigarette packs to stiffen the packs, to protect the cigarettes, and then, you know, they weren't really thinking about making an actual collectible at the time. But here's another polar bear back, Zimmerman. This is actually alphabetically, it's the last card in the set of 524. Sovereign 350 back. Willits. This is in one of the variations. He has another one that's just without the S on the last name and with a red background. This is the regular old mill back without having the Southern League. So it's not. It's a non-Southern League card with a normal old mill back. Toronto, Fred Mitchell, another Sovereign back. Now some of these are in rough shape, but because they're in rough shape doesn't mean they're not collectible. Sometimes you're looking for a certain card with a certain back and you don't have a whole lot of options. So in a case like this, it's a rough looking card, but it's got a rare Sovereign 150 subjects back. So this front back combination is a little more difficult to get, and you know, they are available in the higher grades, but you know, you're gonna spend you know, starting at $200 and up. So when something like this comes along and it might be for $30 or $40, it's a huge bargain, and it kind of fills that hole in your set until one day, you know, a nicer one comes along at the right price. One thing about these cards is if you wait long enough, eventually something's going to come around at the right price. I don't tend to do any buy it nows on these unless it's a really good deal, or you know, I'm really desperate for that card. You tend to get the best price usually with the auctions. You know, some of the buy it nows are a little overpriced. You know, people buy them at auction and then mark them up on the buy it now, trying to make a few bucks profit, and you know, I don't blame them. You know, I tend to do the same thing if I have doubles. You know, I put it on a buy it now, and I always mark it up a few bucks. You know, but very rarely do I ever take a loss on cards like these. It's almost unheard of. It's another 350 factory 25 on the bottom. Variation. You know, like I said, this is normally a common card, and the back is a common back. But when you factor in that factory 25, you know, it just makes it a little more of a difficult card to add to a set. So this is you know, a card that's interesting because some of the Cincinnati cards are known to have missing red ink. It's kind of controversy whether or not they're really truly missing the red ink, or if the red ink just kind of bleached out over the years. A lot of these cards that are in scrapbooks, the glue tends to seep through the cardboard, and for whatever reason it chemically just destroys the color red and leaves all the other colors perfect. So if you notice a card saying, you know, missing red ink, but the back is damaged, you're probably better off staying away from that card, because it's probably just a damaged card. It's not really missing the red ink. It's missing the red ink because of the damage on the back side of it. This one here does have the red, so and another 350 subjects factory 25. Some of these are hard to see, but that's the other thing. A lot of the auctions, a lot of people don't put good descriptions, or they won't put the scans of the back, and if they do put the scans of the back, sometimes they're not clear. So I always recommend, if you're selling cards like these, nice clear front and back scans, and if they're a little blurry, you know, make sure you describe in your description exactly what you have. Saves buyers like me a lot of time having to, you know, reach out through email, you know, asking, you know, is it a factory 25 or is it a factory 30, and then waiting for the response, and then, you know, I'm asking the same questions so many times, and then I start getting replies. It's hard to keep track of, you know, who's connected to what card. So it's it'd be nice if everybody did that. Probably won't happen, but that's okay. There's another factory 25. Donahue. This one's got some paper loss in the back. This one is actually a factory 30. So this one here is, you know, what we would consider a common T206. Surprised I even have this, you know, in the grouping. So I either got it for a really good price, or it was part of a package deal with another card that I really want to add. But still one card down on the list. Tubby Spencer. This card here can be very, very common, and it can be very, very rare. And it's all because of a number on the back. This here is a Tubby Spencer Piedmont cigarettes. Okay, now Piedmont is the most common back on the T206s, but this particular card has a 350 subjects. This card is part of a group of cards that T206 collectors refer to as the Elite 11. Some people know a 12th card. They like to throw a 12th card in that grouping, but the 12th card is questionable if it's authentic, even though it's been authenticated, or if it's just a printer's scrap. We really won't know until maybe possibly a second one shows up. But this one here, 350 subject, this is probably out of all 11 cards, this is the most difficult card out of the group of 11 elites. If it was a 150 subjects Piedmont with this front, it would be considered a very common T206. You know, it's hard to say, you know, $20, you know, is considered maybe a common T206 in a low grade. But just the fact that it ends up being that Elite 11 and it's got the 350 subject. Now, not all 350 subjects are rare. Most 350 subjects are extremely common. But there are 11 cards that if you find these with the 350 subjects back, they're very rare. You know, it literally goes from, you know, $20 to $2,000 quickly. You know, there's just so few of them. So this is you know, one of those, you know, cards that make the set fun to collect, because, you know, it's just like some of the new cards that they have, and they have some of the variations, and one little thing that, you know, they intentionally do gives the card value. Well, this back then, you know, wasn't something they were intentionally doing to give the card value at a later date or at that time. It was just something that just happened by accident. And, you know, we're still studying this set and learning things well over 100 years later about this set, and finding new cards that we never knew existed. So, you know, it's kind of like a treasure hunt. You know, there's just so many ways to collect this set. So many different budgets. You know, depending on what your budget is, you can, you know, collect a team set, and not really care about what the backs are. You know, there's just so many different ways. People with a higher budget, you know, may want to get one of every card front and not worry about the card backs. I don't want to say it's simple, but it's you know, with the right money, you know, getting up to 520 different cards is pretty simple. You know, I don't want to make it sound like it's, you know, the easiest thing to do, you know, but, you know, if you weren't shopping around looking for deals on the cards, you know, you could build a a set of 520 cards fairly quick. There are 4 other cards in the set that are a lot more difficult. You know, one of them being the Hannes Wagner, which pretty much every baseball collector, baseball card collector has heard of, or has, you know, a reprint in their set, or you know, it's one of the most famous baseball cards probably of all time. So that, you know, it just makes this set fun to collect. Bob Ganley. This is another card that is part of that Elite 11, just like the Spencer. I'm not sure what back this is. Let's take a look. Okay, so this is not one of the Elite 11 backs. It's got a different back. It's a 150 subject. Factory, sorry about the glare, factory 25 it looks like. And still, you know, it's not the most, like I said, the most common. But it's pretty common. You know, there's quite a bit out there. This is actually another one of the Elite 11s. It's funny that I got these all in order here. I didn't mean to do that. Something that was, looks like, bought from Dean's Cards a while back. Let's see, it's not one of the Elite 11 backs, but still a nice card. And, you know, if you're building a set, front and back combinations, you know, you're going to need at least one of every combination. So this is another one from the, you know, possible Elite 11. And let's see what we got. Not one of the Elite 11s, but it's it's a 150 factory 25. And you know, one less card in the set that has to be worried about. Lattimore. This card here, you know, if you look at the top border, it seems like it has a lot of extra cardboard, which it does. This card was probably on the edge of a sheet. Some collectors actually like finding these cards and purchasing them, ones with the larger borders, and they will actually pay a little bit more money for them. So this one has got a little more difficult back. This is kind of falls almost in the middle of difficulty of all the different backs. Some collectors actually specialize in just collecting one back. There is one T206 collector out there that specializes just in this particular back and has a you know, an impressive collection, and he's nearing completion, the last I knew. So we'll have to see how that goes, and you know, maybe when that, you know, happens, we can do a little story about that. Frank Baker, Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, with this card, you know, Frank Baker only had one card in the whole set. Some other players have multiple cards. There's also other players that aren't even Hall of Famers that have more cards than the, you know, current Hall of Famers. You know, they produce cards, you know, based on, you know, who they thought was good at that time. You know, kind of like things are now. You know, a hot rookie card comes out, everybody wants it, they spend a ton of money. Next year the guy plays, doesn't play that well, the value drops. Nice thing about these cards, they're all over 100 years old. Their careers have come and gone. Very difficult for them to tarnish their reputation at this point. So, you know, there's no issue of scandals or steroids or, you know, things, you know, social media stuff. You know, it just didn't exist back then. So even though some of these players do have, interesting backgrounds. Any damage to their value is already you know, said and done. This is old mill back. Sticker is actually on the plastic there, not on the card. Nice front back combination, you know, for a Hall of Famer. This one, sorry about the tape. I didn't get a chance to transfer it over to a cleaner holder. Let's see. This is a factory 20. So the factory 25s, you know, for the 350 subject, are more uncommon than the factory 30s. You know, so if you were to start collecting this set and you wanted to get something that wasn't the easiest to get, but you wanted a little bit of difficulty, but still, you know, pay probably the same amount of money with a little bit of searching, you know, you could find the factory, the 350 subject factory 25s. So, you know, that's the nice thing about these cards. You know, if you take some time and search, you will find some pretty decent buys. This is, you know, a card here that he's got a couple different poses. This happens to be one of them. And this one, same thing, factory 25. As you can see, you know, I tend to buy a little more difficult and, you know, keep the common ones, you know, because, you know, for the last purchases, only because there's a lot of them. This one here, another factory 25. As you can see, I've probably been buying more of the factory 25 cards lately, just because I have so many of the other ones, and, you know, now I'm at that point where I'm either spending a ton of money on one card, you know, or get a ton of cards for the same amount of money. So this card here is actually a very interesting card, and we'll probably end up doing a video about this card on its own. This card is, at this point, unknown to the collecting world. Now this card with the old mill back, such as this one, is a little more of a difficult one, because this was what they would call an early print run. You know, these were produced from 1909 to 1911, and this card here with the old mill back, you know, the old mill back looks just like this. It doesn't have any subject numbers. It does have a factory number on the bottom, factory 25, but that number, factory 25, is the same factory number on all the old mills. The only old mill variation is the Southern League cards. So with this particular card, you know, you don't have to put a whole lot of thought into, you know, variations. But the earlier cards, the ones that were produced in 1909, and I guess you could call some of the early 1910 cards also, they fall into a range that T206 collectors call a print group. This particular card being from the print group 1. They're just more difficult to come by. The other print groups throughout the series of cards for Old Mill, much easier to find. Print group 1 cards are very difficult to find, and when you do find them, they're usually pretty expensive. They tend to start at $100 for a low grade, and as the grade gets higher, the price jumps up there quick. But what makes this card very special, and it's probably hard to tell on this camera, the ink on these is one of the variations. Now the Southern League cards, they come in the black ink is normal. Some of them were made with brown ink. Those are considered printer's scrap cards, where they were, they left the factory. Somebody took them home, probably cut them up, let their kids play with them, whatever, and it makes them very rare now. They were never issued in packs with the brown. A few years back, there was an old mill card similar to this one from the print group one, and it's actually printed with a bluish ink and not black. This particular card here is actually printed in that same color blue. If I get a chance, and I can get to the National maybe this year, I'll definitely have this card, authenticated and probably graded, and find out once and for all if everybody's in agreement that this is a blue ink old mill back card. So it's there's one out there already from the print group one, so you have to assume if it came from a sheet, there's going to be more, and this happens to, I believe, be one of the other cards from that same sheet. So it's, like I said, it's hard to tell on this camera. It doesn't have that same color blue that I see in person, or I can get on like a scan on a scanner, but you can kind of tell right there it's got a little bit of a bluish look to it. It's definitely not black. I actually took a group of these cards with the same back and this card, and mixed it in with the others, handed the pile to my mother and said, take a look at these cards. What do you see? I didn't even tell her what to look for. I didn't tell her what, that there was a color difference, or I just said, does one look different to you than the rest? And sure enough, she picked this card, and I said to her, why did you pick this card? She says, well, it looks bluish and the other ones are black. And I said, okay, that's, hey, if I have to assume my mother's, correct, so I'm not seeing the same thing, we're both seeing the same thing, but I'm not the only one seeing it. So we'll have to see how this goes. If it gets authenticated, it will, it'll be big news in the T206 community, because then everybody's going to start looking at their print group 1 old mills and find some hidden gems possibly. This card here, actually I found it by accident. I purchased it as a regular old mill back, and I got it, put it in a sleeve, put it in a box, and that was that. And one day I was searching through these cards for a particular card, looking for a certain print defect that was questioned, and so I said, yeah, I'll take a look and see what I have. And so I wasn't really looking at the card fronts. I was just going through the backs real quick and not really paying attention to the fronts. And I just happened to be at the right angle and the right light, and I just stopped. I was like, wait a minute, this card looks different. Why does it look blue? And yeah, you can kind of tell from there. I'll put it to the side, and when we find a black old mill back, we'll compare the two. Here's a Myers. Here's a black one. Okay, so we can get the blue one. Let's see if we can. Yeah, it's still a little difficult to tell. Yeah, you can kind of tell a little bit. It doesn't matter what kind of light I put it in. Yeah, I guess you can tell like that. Yeah, it's definitely a different color ink. So, like I said, leave it up to the experts if I make it to the national. If they're all in agreement that, you know, it's the same kind of blue ink as the first one, and it was SGC that actually graded the first Old Mill blue ink card. And I believe after the show, or not too long after that, the card sold for about $20,000. And, you know, I'm not too sure about the history after that. I haven't really followed it too much. But yeah, very interesting card. You know, hopefully it turns out as being a, you know, another blue ink card, and like I said, and everybody will start searching their Old Mill backs again. And, you never know. So there's another nice card. This is a 150. Sorry about the glare. I can't tell. Factory 25. Most likely. I don't have too many factory 30s. There are some factory 30s I do have, which will be in another video. They're known as factory 30 no prints. Basically, front back card combinations that should not exist. And I actually have the only known complete set of those. So it's a interesting grouping of cards. Most people in the T206 hobby know about the cards, but not all are in agreement of certain cards existing. Even though I've even included scans of the cards, it was still being questioned. So hopefully when I make a video with the complete set of 28 cards, there'll be no more questions, you know, about them existing. And then the rest of you can go out there and search for those also. Another Old Mill back. This one's got some paper loss, but like I said, sometimes a card comes along at the right price and you grab it. Mike Donlin with bat. He's got a couple different poses, I believe. Another Old Mill back with a little bit of paper loss. See, back then, a lot of people, what they would do is they would stick these cards in scrapbooks. They would glue them down or tape them down. Other people would, you know, pin them to a bulletin board, so sometimes you get little pinholes in them. And, you know, sometimes it's, you know, just a little bit of damage on the back of the card, and, you know, the front of the card looks nice. And some collectors that collect just the fronts of the cards, and they're not really too concerned about the advertisements on the back, you tend to save a lot of money with a little bit of paper loss on the back, and, you know, a very nice looking card front. So, you know, that's another thing to think about, you know, if you're getting into this set. If you're not too concerned about the advertising backs, you could just search out really nice cards with fairly sharp corners, but with paper loss, and you'd be surprised how inexpensive you can probably build a near set of these. And there's another one with some paper loss, and like I said, same thing. Sometimes you gotta get what you can get when you're looking for this particular front with this particular back. You know, some people collect certain players, certain teams. Some people specialize on, you know, with just one particular card, and then they collect that one card with every known card back. So, you know, they basically have a you know, a run of the same front, all different advertising backs. And you know, some of these cards, you know, they're, you know, you can get up to anywhere between, I think, 20, you know, some of the cards have between 20 and 30 different you know, advertising backs for the same front. So depending on which card you choose, if you were to collect that way, would also depend on, you know, how much money you would be looking to spend, you know, on that journey. You know, one thing about journeys on collecting, I'm known for saying that I wanted to collect a set of cards that I knew I would never complete during the course of my life. And a lot of people, you know, take that in a funny kind of way. They're like, you know, why would you ever want to collect something if you know you're never going to be able to complete it? And, you know, I try to explain to them that, well, first let me tell you about this card. You know, somebody obviously typed the name of the player, or what they thought was the name of the player, where the name belonged. And the only reason why I picked this particular card up is just because it's a 350 factory 25. It's actually difficult to find. And, you know, I think this card came up and it was like 20 or 30 bucks, and, you know, it fills a spot until a nicer one comes along. But yeah, getting back to that story about not being able to complete the set, one thing I've learned over the years of collecting, and I collect coins, stamps, comic books, baseball cards, non-sports cards, when I complete a set, it's a huge accomplishment. But the next day, I don't know what to do. You know, the fun is kind of over. The fun is in the chase. You know, it's no different than, you know, opening up packs of baseball cards, you know, looking for that certain player, that certain rookie card, or that autograph. You know, you're not just doing it to get the card. You know, part of it is the chase of looking for it, and the enjoyment of it. And, you know, one of the reasons why I finally chose, you know, this, you know, set as my, you know, #1 focus in baseball card collecting is just for that reason. I know I'll never finish the set, and, you know, one of the reasons, you know, I know that is because, honestly, we don't know what a complete set truly consists of. You know, we know how many card fronts there are, 524. There are some other cards that were proof cards that we don't consider part of the set because they were never issued in the cigarette packs. But when it comes to the card backs, we have theories of what cards should exist and which ones should not. What, you know, certain combinations, but none of us are 100% correct until every single place on the planet is searched for these cards, and, you know, we get a full cataloged inventory of what's what, and then we can finally say this is what consists of a complete set. And, you know, that will probably never happen. You know, population reports, you know, when cards are graded, help. Kind of gives you an idea of what is out there. But, you know, there's still new combinations being found all the time. And then there's other ones that are, you know, a new discovery is found, and it's kind of, you know, some of the collectors like to keep it to themselves for a while. You know, which I can kind of understand, because it's like, you know, nobody thought it existed. You find something, it kind of, you kind of go through that period of, okay, are there any others out there, and can I maybe find those and kind of corner the market on that particular front back combination. So I kind of understand it, but at the end of the day, we all end up sharing our hand, basically. What we learned in the set, and what our theories are. One thing about the T206 set, the word theory should be used a lot, because there's just so much we don't know, and that makes the set fun to collect, because there's so much unknown history on the cards. Uncut sheets have, for this collection, or any part of the T206 set, no uncut sheets have ever been found. So there's still theories on how many cards there are on a sheet, and were they all different players on the sheet, or were they the same players but they were just in strips of the same card, and then the next strip was a different player. There are people out there that focus all their time and energy on determining how many cards are on a sheet and where their exact placement is, and it's kind of amazing what they've been able to find, because there's certain little plate scratches on the backs of cards that will follow one card to another, and you can actually tell that those two cards belong side by side. And you do that enough times, you tend to start to get a layout of what a sheet looks like. But at the end of the day, it's still just a theory, until the real deal is found. And it's been over 100 years and nothing's come up, at least not known. So we'll have to see what happens. But like I said, it just makes it fun. Another old mill back, pretty rough condition. And just another old mill. This card here is actually, I don't even know, this shouldn't even be in this grouping, but this is actually a card I have listed on eBay, just because I have a duplicate of it. This is one of the Elite 11 cards, which was a buyback from Topps, which they reinserted into packs of their Topps 206 cards back in 2002. Not really sure why they chose 2002. It's always been a mystery to me. They came out with cards in 2002, 2009, and 2010. I can understand the 2009, 2010, but the 2002 kind of confused me. But what was interesting about this card is it's just got that 350 subjects back, Piedmont. Normally this card front comes with only the 150 subjects back. The 350 subjects are very difficult to find. So it's just very rare for them, well, they didn't know what they had, and obviously whoever sold it to Topps didn't know either at the time. And then so the fact that such a rare card got re-encapsulated by Topps, makes this card most likely one of a kind, in the holder that they put it in. Otherwise, I think the population reports on this particular front-back combination being an Elite 11, there's probably, you know, I haven't checked lately, but if I had to guess, you know, maybe, you know, in the 10 to 12 card range. And then there's always some collectors out there that have some of these ungraded. So yeah, definitely an interesting card, and like I said, most likely a one-of-a-kind from Topps. And you know, that's it for the first stack. I actually have 8 more stacks like this, and we'll probably have to split these videos up so I don't have people falling asleep on me, you know, during my babbling about this set. Some people may find it interesting, others might not. But like I said, you know, I collect these just because, well, they're just difficult. You know, they're just fun, and it's something that, you know, you go into a baseball card store and you ask them, hey, do you have any T206s? And most of the time they don't, you know, and those are baseball card shops. You know, there's others that do. I'm not going to say it's, you know, all of them are like that, but many of them they just don't get involved in the old stuff like this. You know, they're all into the newer stuff, or what they call vintage, which, you know, ends up being, you know, cards from 1980s, 1970s. I don't really consider those vintage cards, because if I did, then I'd have to consider myself vintage, and I'm not ready to do that. So, you know, I'm going to stop this video here, and you know, we'll continue again on another part. And you know, if you enjoyed this video, definitely you know, like it, subscribe to my channel. That always helps. And yeah, check out my other videos. You know, I'll also be doing videos on other topics, such as coins, stamps, comic books, non-sports cards, you know, other T206 videos, different tools in the hobby, you know, things to make, you know, your buying and selling a little bit easier. And you know, if you also have questions, you can always you know, email me. I have my email in the comment section. And yeah, thanks for spending some time with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll continue where we left off at another time. See you then.